Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Daily AI Show. It's what day is it? Thursday, March 12th, 2026. And we appreciate you being here. We're here live Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. And with me right now is Andy. You got the Andy and Brian show for the time being. I think maybe Beth will pop in the door and we'll see if Carl's available as well. But for now, it's me and Andy, which is always nice and happy to see you in the morning, Andy. I know it's earlier where you are, but we're at that time of year now where we get to see the sun come up, usually behind you.
While the show is on, they try to go from pitch black to some sun.
Yeah. I also like the shirt. I like the shirt today. It's very colorful, very cool. Warned everybody in our comments as well. Welcome Jen, Delma, Jean, and others in there as well. All right. So as always, we like to kick off the shows. I missed yesterday's show, so I might have missed some of these topics. But normally we'll talk about the news a little bit, just what's happened over the last 24 hours. It's funny, when we first started the show, right, Andy, we did, basically Wednesdays was our news day. And we sort of had other days where we talked about more tentpole topics. And we still do that, but typically it breaks out of the news discussion into something that's more of a longer discussion. But it occurred to me that things are speeding up ever faster with AI that there's almost always 3, 5 new, news stories of interest too, not just like little things. I think if it was just like, oh, Beth just joined us too. Hey, Beth, I was saying, if the news stories were always just like, oh, OpenAI put out a new, small percentage model and it got 2% faster. It's not very interesting, but because of how AI is now integrating into all these new areas that I think when we started the show, we weren't really talking about. There always seems to be something fascinating, something going on, how businesses are using AI. One of the stories I have from Grammarly is how they're rolling back, how they're using AI because they got slapped on the hand a little bit. And I find that to be all super interesting. So as I was saying, I was not on the show yesterday, so there's always a possibility that I would bring up something we talked about yesterday. So Andy, I'm going to kick it over to you first. And what do you have for us coming out of yesterday over the last 24 hours?
Well, the big news is Perplexity personal computer.
Sadness.
So this is a big one. This is a big one. So it's in the context of OpenClaw, which is an always on running agent on a dedicated machine. A lot of people use a Mac Mini to do it. And it's addressable by various communication channels, whether Telegram or Slack or WhatsApp, for example. And OpenClaw has really taken a lot of the attention in the room around AI recently because it's the emergence of a dedicated personal assistant agent that can actually take actions for you, not just, respond to questions. So on yesterday, at their first ever Developer Day event, Perplexity announced their personal computer, which turns their browser-based computer, like there was Perplexity Comet, which was an active agent that was basically confined to the browser and didn't have access to your machine. And they turned it into this 24/7 proactive AI agent running, they suggest, on a Mac Mini. So they're pushing Apple products even further. This is driving a lot of revenue. The whole OpenClaw ecosystem is driving a lot of revenue for Apple. I think they're probably ramping up Mac Mini, and it doesn't require a really big scale Mac Mini. It's just a small one, and then that Mac Mini can work with your other machines through the access that you provide on that Mac Mini. So the big difference between what Perplexity already offered with their Comet browser, this agentic browser, is that you can now work directly with that agent on your local files and applications. So anything that's running on your machines, let's make it plural because it doesn't confine only to the Mac Mini that's running the agent. This digital worker that's helping you can work around the clock managing your entire sort of workspace. Okay, so and the fact that it's agentic means that you can describe an outcome in natural language to Perplexity personal computer, and it will then spawn any number of agents that it needs, and it'll manage that workflow through to completion. It can browse your folders, it'll read documents, it can edit those documents, can coordinate the applications across different things, the browser and desktop applications that you can now build with Glaze app on your Mac system. Doing using agentic vibe coding to build special applications on your Mac. So this is becoming an operating system more than just an assistant.
Mm,
Uh, okay, so here's a distinction. Like a traditional operating system takes instructions. An AI operating system takes objectives. You tell it what you want to accomplish,
mhm,
it does that. So uh, the Comet Assistant and now the Perplexity personal computer together are really making a big change here. How does it compare to OpenClaw? Well, OpenClaw, as Perplexity announced it yesterday, they said this is for more serious people. But actually, I think I could twist that on its head because in order to work with OpenClaw, you have to kind of be a hacker slash developer to kind of set those things up and manage them through the open source platform that OpenClaw is.
mhm,
And we've always known that eventually somebody would come forward with a more packaged and professional productization of the OpenClaw model, and that's what I think this is that Perplexity has just delivered. It's a managed commercial product. They handle all the infrastructure, the updates and security for it. It's a polished product experience, no DIY setup. Perplexity provides support for the initial cohort that's out there. It's right now on a wait list. So I've signed up for the wait list. I hope I'll be asked to do it. As I said just yesterday on the show, I haven't yet implemented an OpenClaw instance.
yeah.
I'm not going to bother doing that now because I'm going to just try Perplexity personal computer. And the other main advantage of this is that it's taking advantage of Perplexity's full model orchestra. Perplexity can access virtually any model of import out there. And so your Perplexity personal computer, think PerpClaw, right? I just invented that, but it's not
Market.
perfect, right? It's PlexClaw. Let's use PlexClaw.
That's
So PlexClaw is going to have access to any model it likes uh, because it's working through the Perplexity platform.
Yeah, I think what I saw from Perplexity was that they also introduced a computer for enterprise, which smart move, right? We've seen what Anthropic is, the inroads they've been able to make with enterprise. Not to say OpenAI hasn't, but typically you think enterprise and it's like sort of what Anthropic has done. So, we always talk about the moat. What does Perplexity have as far as a moat? And this is obviously a smart move. What the X post says is computer runs multi-step workflows across research, coding, design, and deployment. It routes tasks across 20 specialized models and connects to 400 plus applications. And in this little demo video, this little splash video, they show you using computer right out of Slack, right? And, doing certain things in there. So I think this, all of this kind of makes sense. There was another news story from Tencent about QClaw, which they were building, and that shot like that Chinese stock up. We're going to see more and more of this. I said before, yeah, Kim Yap, Gene saying Kim Yap has a, thank you, a claw variant. Thanks for putting that back up, Beth. But what I was going to say is, I've said this before in the show, but I'll just repeat it. I did use, or I do have MyClaw, dot AI, is it? I still have it up on the computer, but I kind of, I don't know, abandoned it because I could not control the cost to a reasonable level. And whatever its ability is, uh, was outshined by my inability to keep costs to a point where it made sense for me to mess with it. And at some point, there's a tipping point there where you go, I can't, So I love the idea of it. I got like they reached out, with an email or something. I'm sure most of it got it, and they had like an introductory rate. I thought, yeah, like most things, like sure, for so many dollars, I'm willing to try this. But that was really just to get into them spinning up the virtual servers, obviously, because I'm not using a Mac Mini. I'm using a virtual server, which is the whole point of MyClaw, which is great. And you can get one, two, three, four cores. You can get a lot of power. I mean, you could do a lot through MyClaw if you're willing to pay for it, but that doesn't pay for like what you're spinning through Anthropic. Now, I haven't touched it in probably 2, 3 weeks at this point since it first sort of splashed out, but my experience was that even after basically begging and pleading with it and trying to do what I could, it it was ingesting so much with every command that it was just running through tokens like at a runaway train pace. And one time I thought, okay, shame on me, right? Like get better at your prompting, Brian, like fix it. So I burned through like $10, and then it seemed like it was like 30 minutes later, and it's like, hey, you want me to go ahead and top off that $10? And I was like, no. This is going somewhere where obviously I'm a little outside of my scope. It's a little bit farther. So after paying for the initial whatever core was, plus $10 and another $10, and I was maybe a day into kind of messing around with it, it started to lose its appeal to me a little bit. But I get the newsletters and I am blown away by what people build in their MyClaw instances. And so if you're not signed up for it, I do recommend, whether you use MyClaw or not, sign up for the MyClaw newsletter, however you might go about doing that, because it comes out every couple of days. I don't think it's every day. And it's literally what people are doing, what people are building, which is really, really cool. They have a story in here about folks in like their 60s building stuff, which I personally love this idea. People who have, you know, deep industry knowledge. I think of my dad when my dad's like 75, but let's see, it'd be 77 this year. But I think of my dad and all his deep industry knowledge. For him, it would be aviation and maintenance-based aviation. And just the idea of my dad just kind of going ham on something that could build things for him with all of his, years upon years upon years of knowledge in that industry. I mean, he is an expert in as far as that goes, right? And so, the idea of him sitting down somewhere and just being able to be like, check out what I built, I imagine it would be pretty amazing. So anyway, getting back to the computer side of it, Andy, what I wanted to say is, like, yes, I agree that that's an area where I would say the concern is, we always tell people, I mean, Carl, you say this plenty. By the way, Carl joined us. Carl, you say this a lot of times, like with your clients too, like, hey, we don't really tell them to go too far or commit too deeply to one tool. So, okay, here comes Perplexity Computer, and they're going to handle everything for you. They're going to pick the models. They're going to make it, very easy to use and set up. But what happens when you want to move away from computer in the future? Maybe a computer doesn't end up being the right solution in the long run, and one of these other tools or one of these other enterprise companies comes up with a better solution. Can I get out of computer? Would I even have the ability to get out of computer? Who?
Yeah, let me address that. So one of the keys of the Claw architectural design is that it has a persistent local memory. So all of the context that you build while working with any of the Claw variants out there is accessible. It's in a file in a collection of files on your machine. So you could just then move over to some other Claw variant or some managed system like the Perplexity personal computer and just give it access because it has access to all your files and say, go look at all the things that we did with MyClaw and and check it out. I think MyClaw and other hosted versions of the Claw systems out there are basically just providing you with a means around having to buy a dedicated local machine like a Mac Mini to run it to avoid the problem that might happen to you if you run it on your actual main workstation, right? If you run this Claw on your workstation, you take the risk that the Claw is going to do something that you didn't want to have happen on that machine, which is why people say, okay, isolate it to a separate machine, maybe an older machine that you have sitting around, or buy for $600, a low level Mac Mini and, run it on that. But I don't have the same concern that you have about portability, particularly because it's basically just an AI that's operating with full access to every one of your resources and all of your application subscriptions and everything else.
Has this come up at all, Carl, in your conversations with clients? Have they talked anything about Perplexity computer? Does that come up at all? I'm just curious.
This was announced yesterday, so I doubt that that's
Oh,
happening.
computer was announced, what, a
Yeah,
week or 2 ago?
computer. Well, computer is basically Comet, right?
No,
No, no, no, no,
no, it was
computer.
announced, what, 2 weeks ago, Beth? A
Yeah,
week ago?
something like that.
On, per computer?
Yeah, but only available to the Mac subscription right now.
That's right, yeah, it was like $100 a month or something, right? At the minimum?
No, I think
Yeah.
it's like $200, isn't it?
Or is it 200?
Perplexity's
Yeah.
Perplexity's max is 200. Yeah.
What's the extra $100?
The no, so what we've noticed in the past year and a half is like people using Perplexity or coming up has significantly decreased. I don't know. We just keep hearing less and less and less whenever we ask the question.
Sure.
I think like one of our clients who's one of the most forward facing, their IT has provided select group of people all these old Dells to run OpenClaw out of. So they all have, and I told them to do it as not as to run OpenClaw for their business, but rather it's a good like experience to understand how to set it up. Because once you understand that, then everything, whether you use it or not, doesn't matter. It's that experience you get running it. I think the big issue though that runs through every single company that we work with now is your data, like how tech infrastructure has been set up, data cybersecurity the last 2 decades is not congruent with how AI and agents work. It just isn't congruent with that. They're like, if you give developer access to anybody, there's literally no way to prevent that kind of stuff now. Like it's very like it's always been designed, hey, prevent this, or as some IT folks say, zero permission based.
Oh.
Like we don't give you anything and we'll slowly incrementally give you whatever it is to protect the company. But the moment you give anyone access to, let's say, a codex, it's game on. Like you have access, you can put whatever folder you have access to, away you go. I think it even becomes more hilarious when the one of the presidents of the company is running head on into IT, and Ty literally said, "I fucking own the company. You were gonna give it to me." How as an IT person, how are you gonna say no to that? You can't
Yeah.
say no to that. You will not say no to that. So I like that's what is the issue is running into companies now, not to that degree, but to the point of I want to use this, and IT's like scrambling to like, hey, how can we protect versus the excitement and the acceleration? Like one guy's like, I was like, what would be really cool is if you have agents trying to access things, you could have your agents trying to block them. And he's like, but we don't have time to explore those options because we're so busy just managing and keeping up with everything. So it is a very, very, very difficult thing. And when you have these things come out, legitimately companies have to do security reviews. Hey, like what are all the aspects? But those security reviews take time. And then when you have people saying IT's holding us up, that makes you look like a terrible group. But you're not. You're trying to protect it. But again, the
Right.
infrastructure you're working with is not congruent. So like it's a completely different, very different world out there. And I feel
Yeah, Greg is saying the days of IT rule are over finally. And I think there's a lot of people that actually would feel the same way as like what Greg is saying, that they feel, that perhaps IT, whether they had the right intentions or not, perhaps IT held a little too many of the strings of the marionette, and now people are starting to flex a little bit and say like, I can do this. I don't need you. I can figure this out, or I no longer need to rely on you. But then also to your point, Carl, that causes other problems.
yeah, you have a
We
prompt
all
injection. It's like right, like just one prompt injection that is done correctly. I have no clue what will happen. Honestly, I don't. And so, like,
Yeah.
I think for us as our job, we have to be there's what we're finding from a adoption level is risk tolerance level too, right? The people who are more who are have very, very high risk tolerance still just do whatever. It's like we need to compete. We gotta go. We're gonna open everything up. Versus those like, hey, we gotta protect our market share or protect all, like we have so many private data connected to so many systems. We have to protect it. One thing that just came up yesterday was very interesting. The president was saying, "Hey, the vendors, the contracts we have to sign with these vendors, what we have to build in all these AI clauses in there on how our data is being used because they're going to want to tap into our systems with their agent. Like they have to be forward thinking because they're already deploying on their end certain things. So it's like, okay, you have to start thinking that way too. It's like, hey, we're giving them our data. What if something happens to them? Who's liable now? Those are the things that, now you have to start thinking about, and the lawyers get involved in all
Right.
sorts of fun.
And I was just gonna talk about lawyers, right? Because what it like everyone, woohoo, we can do whatever we want. IT is not it doesn't hold the reins anymore. But as soon as something goes wrong, as soon as something happens, you're gonna call IT and you're gonna call the lawyer. Because those are the places that have said, hey, let's look at this and like think about the future, the things that could happen. Carl, I'm wondering if what we're gonna see is for that CEO running into ICT situation, will just like a boilerplate. Sure. Just I need you to sign that you were warned, right? Like you had consent. The same, like you could check yourself out of the hospital. We just need to like have you sign the thing that said you did it against doctor's orders. Are we going to see that in IT, right?
Mind you, this is the same company that literally said, "Hey, we're going AI. You either are in or get out."
Yeah.
Like there's no like, kind of change managing about anything. It's you're in or you're out. That's
Yeah.
it. No, none of that, which is very different from another company who has an anti-AI group, but valuable to them. It's a lot of like
Yep.
beating around the bush, trying to like do all sorts of mental gymnastics about it. And it's very fascinating when you see the dichotomy of these two things. Very, very interesting of how that plays out company to company to company and where the dynamics are. It's just fascinating where it's gonna, yeah.
I agree. Okay, I want to bring up a quick story. While we're kind of, I know we haven't all gone around as far as news and stuff, but this one caught my eye. From Grammarly, which, by the way, I did not realize Superhuman owned Grammarly. I don't know why. I didn't know that. So because I've always known Grammarly, but like I don't know, Superhuman is like the email thing. My boss uses it. Whatever.
Superhuman bought it, I think. I don't think
Is
it
that
was
what it was?
always. Yeah.
Okay. So okay, here's the deal. So Grammarly had in August, they rolled out a feature called Expert Review that would offer feedback on your writing, offering this is from Engadget, I'm quoting, offering AI generated feedback that would appear to come from a famous writer or academic of note. These recreations are based on publicly available information from third-party LLMs, which Engadget says, which sounds a lot like web crawlers of dubious legality were involved. So this wasn't like Ben Franklin suggests da 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 da. Somebody from the past, and you go, okay, it's a bit, it's an AI, and it suggested Ben Franklin. No, they were using people who are alive, and it could be anybody. It could be like experts in an area. It could be bestsellers of fiction, scientific minds, or as Engadget says, your friendly neighborhood tech bloggers, living or dead. So as you can imagine, this is like shocker, right? As you can imagine, these people who are being called into Grammarly and saying so and so might suggest you do this, whether it's like direct or indirect, those people have an opinion about that. Hey, why are you using my name and whatever sources and saying that this might be the way I would adjust this in Grammarly? So they were not pleased. There might be there's an attempted class action suit already underway against Superhuman. They tried to address the complaints by allowing writers to opt out of the platform, but isn't this the same thing we see every time? I mean, this drives me nuts. Honestly, it's always it's always after the fact, ask for forgiveness. But we've seen OpenAI do this with Sora. We've seen, many of the companies do this where they just use this public information. And then after they get caught red-handed, which they must see coming, they go, oh, we'll give you an option to opt out of that if you don't really want to be part of our, having your name show up or whatever. Well, I mean, the damage has been done at that point. So as far as I'm concerned, these folks are within their right to have an opinion about this and how their names are being used on a product like Grammarly. So it's currently down for now. And the CEO, I'm not going to try to say his or her name, wrote a LinkedIn post that they will disable expert review while it reassesses a feature.
So,
Good.
but the thing about this is that I don't think the comparison is accurate because people consume books, right? And that was the thing, like AI is just reading the book and learning from the book the way people do. People don't say that they are representing or using somebody else's name. And that, like, we're not allowed to say, I'm using, I'm writing as Annie Dillard, right? Like, I can't claim that. Annie Dillard owns what Annie Dillard creates, right?
Right.
And that's the thing. They could have done this with like ish or in the style of potentially, but they made it sound like that it was coming with permission from the name of the person. And you own your own name.
I mean, I wouldn't want to see my name show up like that without Grammarly having reached out. That would really bother me. I mean, God knows how many hours, I mean, 600 plus hours easily of content on this show. So what would stop them from starting to use any of our names in references to Grammarly? Oh, well, Andy Halliday or Beth Lyons or whoever, suggested this because it pulled it out of one of our transcripts because it was now in the public ether. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to speak for everybody else. I wouldn't be thrilled about that. I'd be like, hold on a second, So I think your point is right. Your clarification there, Beth, is right. Either way, I'm growing tired of these types of stories where it's oops, our bad type of thing after the fact, because Grammarly is not a small company. Superhuman is not a small company. And surely they had internal conversations about how this might go wrong. And I would imagine, I am guessing, this is Brian's take on this, that they decided that the risk was worth it. That they decided that the PR or whatever good, bad press is still press, whatever, that whole thing. Like, they decided that they were going to still run with this. And when their hand got slapped, which they must have seen coming, that they were going to run with it, and this would be what they do, because it's putting Grammarly, and I'm now speaking about Grammarly on the show for 5 minutes. I have to imagine. I don't think people are just like Grammarly, like, we never thought this was going to be a problem with AI. After all the other stories that have come out about this, it seems, I don't know. It's like the fool.
Would 100%. I know the risks. I was to be like seed dance. I'm like, I know that people are gonna create this.
Right.
I'll have a boilerplate apology note. I know what I'm gonna do. Like, it's done. This isn't hard. But it's like, but the thing is, tomorrow we'll be talking about something else. So it won't matter. Like, that's it's unfortunate thing, but that's what it is. It really won't matter because 2 days, 3 days, you'll forget. Grammarly, I forgot what we talked because there's something crazy, something else we talked about.
Okay, but that depends on who you are, because it does really matter to the authors, right? To the authors who this affects. And I feel like when we say, it's going to move, the conversation's going to move out of the bubble and we won't care, I feel like we need to name that there are people who still will, right? And there are people there who read those people who still will.
Yeah, we'll move on in the news and stuff like that. But if you're that family, if you're the keeper of the estate, if it's somebody who's already deceased, then of course it's going to be personal to you. And look, I hope I don't know what I don't know if they have a chance. I don't know the class action suit, but you know what? It's going to take more of these lawsuits to happen. It's going to take some big settlements or big cases for these companies to decide maybe in the future it's not worth it. But
But how big would it need to be? Because it's like
Ends up
Anthropic
I
paid the
guess.
1 billion, and it's like, "'Kay, 1 billion. We just raised this many billion." So, I'm
Well,
sure
Well,
when you raise it, you
that's
always
interesting.
right? Like, when we raised money back in 2012, we're like, we did set aside, not to that degree, amount, just like legal you have to set that amount. As I'd be like, "Yeah, I'm gonna set this amount," and it's what it is. Like, it's unfortunate that that happens, but it's like, I've seen it too many times in, corporate like, if you do whatever in corporate espionage or something I was taking, it's like, we will the corporation has to look at the risk reward of doing something, and then you're like, "Hey, we have from a legal perspective, this is how much the penalty max will be." Okay, we set aside, but we know our lawyers were gonna fight till whatever, till to make a settlement that's gonna be below that. There is some sort of, like, risk reward that sometimes happens with that. Kinda sucks, but I remember so many times in some of the companies I worked for, that was part of the whole cycle.
yeah. It was assumed it was gonna
It was assumed
yeah.
it is unfortunate because like, those authors, but also, like, think about all the people that Anthropic like, I keep going back to that. It's like, you pirated books, like, books from people, and you settled, but the thousands of books, technically, the authors only got, like, 2 grand per pop. And whatever the small amount was, and you're like, "Well, was that versus what they could have made from that?" I'm not sure what the calculation was, but, like, it didn't end up being very much. Or in a grand scheme for that individual person.
Right.
It kinda sucks for that person, right? When you look at, "Oh, it's a big amount." It's not really that big amount per person who could have made more out of that.
Okay. I know that I have a couple other things like, but I don't know. We're chit chatting back and forth. But I mean, Beth, I guess Carl, do you guys have any news stories that popped up over the last day or so that you guys want to bring up? Beth says yes, I do, or Beth says yes, I'm good.
Nope, Beth says, "Yes, I do." Um, this morning, Google Maps dropped an update, Ask
Oh yeah.
Maps, and I find these things like, I I love Google Maps. Like, there's just something very
Me too.
much about, being able to see where I am in the context of everything around me that feels very satisfying. So there are 2 updates. There's an Ask Maps, which is a Gemini-powered conversational search layer for real world place questions. Brian, I can imagine this in um, your, like, road trip thing. Somebody asks something, you're like, "Hey, let's ask Google Maps what it is. Thank
I,
you." Um
I'm a geek when it comes to geography and maps and stuff. So I always love all this stuff. But go ahead. Yeah.
And the other feature is immersive navigation. So it's no longer the 2D driving experience that you're seeing. You can
Mm,
see 3D route views, smarter guidance, more context about trade offs like tolls versus traffic.
mm.
Very helpful. And it's rolling out in the US and India on Android and iOS with desktop coming later. And this is great. Ask Maps, right? You can just ask your human messy questions, right? Like where is the nearest electric car plug-in place? Yes, sorry. I don't drive an electric car.
No,
Um
no, you're right though. It's like messy questions, but complex questions is I think if it gets to that level, right? Gemini is totally capable of doing this. But like think about it. When you're in a car, oh, definitely when my daughter was younger, she used to get car sick. And lesson learned after maybe one time, and then you have the emesis bags, in the car ready to go. But like anybody that's had a baby has dealt with a blowout. Anybody that's had a little kid has had a, "Hey, I think I'm going to be sick," and literally 3 seconds later they're sick. Like there's no warning, So things happen, right? I mean, like whatever it is, and so being able to like hands free essentially do a very complex what should be a Siri search, right? But like directly to Google Maps if that's what's up on your screen and CarPlay, Apple CarPlay or Android car, whatever that's called. then I think that's really, really valuable, because I probably do want to ask a question like, what's the next stop I can take with high rated clean bathrooms that have
Right.
verified baby changing stations,
Yeah.
not just in the women's restroom, right? Like, these are the things that mattered to me all the time when I was, when we had a young kid, and like matter to people like my wife and my daughter. Like, it's not as big of a deal for me, clearly, but for my wife and my daughter, there is a priority placed on places like, I'll say, like a Cracker Barrel, which traditionally has cleaner bathrooms from their standpoint, right? And so, like, that matters. That matters in a car ride, and being able to just say that to Gemini via Google Maps and have it in the background, go read the reviews, figure that out, geolocate me, and then update my routing map to say, hey, that's only another 5 minutes up the road. Do you want me to reroute you there? Yes.
Right.
100%. And can I get a bite to eat while I'm there? Tell me that too. What are the hours? All that stuff. So I love this. If that's what it is, Beth, this to me is like real use case type stuff. It's not this pie in the sky AI stuff that like, oh, that's kind of cool. It's like, no, this is something I would literally use like this weekend.
Right. Yes.
So,
Yeah.
love it. Can't wait to use it. You said it already rolled out on iOS?
It is rolling out today on iOS.
I'll have to update it, make sure I have it. And then desktop would be cool too, for that as well. Yeah. The only thing I'll say about Google Maps is I'm not a fan of Waze, although I know, is it Waze? Yeah. Although they own Waze, which is always weird to me because it's like one and the same, but too much of the Waze stuff is merging into Google Maps, and it annoys me. So, as somebody who likes the traditional Google Maps, hey, keep your Waze stuff over there with the Waze people.
Yeah.
Leave my Google Maps alone.
Yeah. So it's not in CarPlay yet. Will expand over the coming months to eligible mobile devices, CarPlay, Android Auto,
Love it.
etc.
Yeah, especially too, I'll tell you, you see, you're not an EV a person, or don't have an EV. I do. I have a Chevy Bolt. I've talked about that before. But I will tell you, I'm not that I'm in the business. Or not in the space of wanting a new car. We're not there. But anyway, the 2027 Bolt, like, Chevy went all in and decided we're not doing CarPlay or Android car. We're doing our own Chevy thing. I'll tell you right now, I mean, it might be the best damn car in the world. I am buying another Chevy Bolt if I don't have CarPlay. Isn't that so silly that like they're like, we're doubling down on this AI and our own, proprietary software? I'm like, listen, y'all aren't Rivian, so don't even try to get me to come over to your super cool system. Rivian has the super cool system, that, but like, that's so stupid to me that they're willing to bet people buying cars over a software. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to buy your car because of your stupid lockout of your software. Screw you.
Well, you can buy their car and you can pay about $1,000 to change out the head system.
Right.
And that
Well,
part,
I mean, look, my old 2014 Santa Fe that we bought like a year ago because we needed third row seating for all my daughter and all her friends, but we bought an older car we could just buy with cash, and I did rip out that thing and right off of Amazon for not 1,000, like $250. Takes the whole.
Right.
It was an old CD player. Took the whole CD player out, old school radio. The whole thing is an entire new, CarPlay, touchscreen, the whole thing. So
nice. I'm glad they're cheaper now. I may even retrofit on some of my old vehicles.
Well,
it's easier, right? Because it's like you get all the different options. Like, try to do that when you try to buy a new Bolt, which I think is so dumb, like a 2027 Bolt, and then rip that out. Like, you probably have no shot. It's so integrated and
Right.
all that. So anyway,
Okay, I have a couple of quick things. Tuesday this week, OpenAI announced dynamic visual explanations. It's a better way to present complex responses to you around math and science and so on. So if you're using ChatGPT to ask questions about things that, pique your interest and imagination, it will generate an interactive module along with the text response. And then that module can respond to further questions that you have in it. So the examples that they provided are, like, you want to understand how to calculate the area of a circle. Well, there's a visual explanation that comes along with that. So complex ideas can be delivered more graphically. And I haven't tried it yet. It's available for anybody who uses ChatGPT. All logged in users can do it. So experiment with that next time. Ask a technical question and see what you get infographically. The other thing I wanted to mention is that when it comes to automation using AI, customer support has been really at the leading edge of practical implementations. Like if you go back even all the way to 2023, the Klarna announcement that they were going to get rid of 700 customer support people, it turned out that the technology wasn't ready, or it had a negative impact somehow, and they ended up bringing back human customer support agents. Well, the technology is advancing, and there's a new startup that just got a further series with a tripled valuation at $4.5 billion. So a company being valued at $4.5 billion means that they're getting a lot of customers, and they just added a new capability to their customer service platform, which they call anticipatory customer support. So its outbound voice feature enables their AI to initiate calls to consumers. So if you get into a customer support queue, you provide a ticket because you want to get access to customer support. It's now going to be able to, the AI will process that and then create an outbound call with a very natural conversational interaction with you to try to solve your problems. And it keeps context for each of those tickets. So think of it as an AI concierge for support. And I can tell you that, I hate getting on customer support calls because you have to go first through the interactive voice response system. You're screaming, agent, 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 represent, because nothing's worked. And hopefully in the future, customer support with the advances of this company and others, specifically this company is called Decagon. So now, from time to time, I've thought, okay, what if somebody asks me the question, what's the best solution for customer support automation? If I want to try to reduce my costs, and that question has occurred to me, in conversations with, for example, the CEO of LifeAid. Um, I I think I could point them towards something like Decagon now as a starting point for evaluation. You have to look at the pricing of these things and see what AI tells you in its comparative evaluation of those for Decagon against all the other alternatives for automated customer support. But this one looks like it's going up head to head against Salesforce's tools and also this other product called Sierra, the rapidly expanding AI-powered customer experience market space.
I'll tell you my recent. I'm getting you get your annual like AC, just preventative maintenance work done. Well, it's that time of year in Florida because it's getting hot out, or it is hot out now. And anyway, when I called the number, this company, I used to know the guy who did all the work, but he's grown his company, and now they do AC, and now they do like electrical, and they've grown a little bit, right? I got off the call with scheduling that like they're gonna have somebody call me back, and I actually hung up the phone. I went, shit, I don't know if that was AI or not. Like, it could have been a nice, lovely lady that actually took all my information, but I don't think it was. I think it was actually AI, and if it was, they're gonna be here, like, today or tomorrow to do the work, and I have to ask them, be like, "Hey, are y'all using AI? Because kudos to you." So I know you're saying, Andy, like, I'm usually the same person yelling, like, "0 representative," trying to get around it, but if that was, in fact, AI the other day, it was seamless. It was pretty impressive, so and they're a local company. I mean, they're just our local area HVAC and electrical. So if they're using it, that kind of shows you that this stuff is definitely getting into the smaller local, your hyper local markets around your area and stuff. So I don't know. I don't know if y'all have knowingly known you had one of the like the AI sort of. It wasn't customer service though. It was like setting up an initial scheduled, appointment or whatever. So I wasn't calling with a complaint, which would be different, right? But it was very like, confirm this is your address, confirm the date, confirm, which is probably easier for AI to just wrap around. But anyway, just thought I'd bring that up because I'm truthfully not sure. And kudos to them if they confused me and I'm not sure whether I had a real person or not on the call. And it kind of feels like a little I don't at what point in the call do you go, I'm just checking. Are you AI? And then the nice lady goes, what? It's like, there's not a really great way to bring that up mid-call, or something like that. So how many R's are in strawberry? Just ask it. Just ask it. Just to see what happens. But anyway. Anything else? I got to drop, but anything else? I'll let you guys wrap it up. But I got to get prep for another meeting here. But yeah, I'll let you take it from here.
Jen is saying, in fact, she has had people do it. She has been so pleasant in customer service on the phone that people have asked.
Well, that's amazing. She's saying it's me. People have asked. I guess maybe, I don't know. I don't know, Jen, you can tell me, and then I got to drop it as like, is that a compliment? I don't know. That you're so nice that people think it might actually be AI. I don't know. That might be a compliment. I'm not sure.
It's like the doctor who gives really great bedside service, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you spent so much time with me and really helped. Are you AI?
Well, does it matter though? Like, will it matter if that is AI or not? I guess it depends on your scenario. Because what I was thinking is like, a big thing up in Canada is like a big health crisis for us is like the overload of people in emergency. Like, there's people waiting there for like some of the stories are, you got to be kidding me, like 8 hours, and then the unfortunate thing, some people have died because of it, and it's like, hey, of all the people here, like, how can you get them through faster? And that's always been a big question is like, can AI help that in some form or fashion? Because it's like, hey, this person has history of this. Not that it'll catch everything, because some just right. It's like, this is history. This is like, that potentially has like you may want to take a look at that person first versus,
Right.
16-year-old like Tim, who like, yeah, he just broke his arm doing a skateboard flip. So he can wait the 8 hours. But right, Mr. Whoever is there is like, hey, we need to, that is a stomach, whatever. So I don't know. Like, it's very, yeah. That's where I was thinking AI would go help those kind of big issues. Yeah.
Yeah. There was an announcement from Pulse. Pulse, I think, is the product. It was a cardio metabolic system, putting everything together so that the measurement systems that you use on a regular basis can go into a pool with your health records and identify intervention. Well, I read it and I was like, "Ooh, this is kind of cool." And then I read that it was an insurance company thing. It's not actually a consumer facing product. And I was like, "Ooh, that's gonna be that's a little more like nanny cam, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
where in the nanny cam. That's what I'm looking for. I am looking for my own information so I can make informed choices." So
Yeah.
I
Well, there's one thing. Well, we still have some time. Like, there's one thing I wanted to bring up. I don't know if you've kind of gone through it for both of you. Is that, has your way that you're essentially prompting changed when you're working from trying to do tasks versus just having conversations? Because I'm doing two separate ways to interact now. Like, if I'm doing like ideation or research, or if I'm not in Claude Code, not in Codex, I'm doing it one way, but in another way, I'm doing it another way. And some of the the base prompting techniques are a little bit different now, because it's like you still have verify and you still have that, but then you start getting into, hey, whether you're in dangerously bypass, or it's like, hey, I want you to verify, I want you to check the results first and then make sure the thing's complete. Like, have you noticed your prompting has changed when when engaging with agents versus not engaging with agents?
So I am not engaging with agents outside of Cloud Code launching sub agents in the
Yeah.
context, but I am absolutely making more use of sub agents. I'm still really working through the compound engineering plugin framework, even when I'm not doing code, where it's like, okay, so we're gonna brainstorm, we're gonna set out a plan,
Mhm.
and then we're gonna before we initiate the plan, maybe we review the plan, but
Yeah.
also look at, like, what in the plan needs to stay in the main conversation and what in the plan should be done by a sub-agent for speed and also for context. But I'm mostly using Cloud Code, and I'm using Codex for non-code things too. I've confused Codex, right? I feel like I feel like I'm having the, "Ma'am, this is a Hardee's." I'm like, "I don't care. We're gonna talk about the process, and, I want you to do the research for me because
Yeah.
you're analysts that I find really interesting."
Because it's now really about me things like, okay, how can I deploy my team of agents, or a what if if the task is more of a sub agent task? Okay, how now I'm thinking, what can I do to ensure my orchestrator does it, essentially controls all these agents for me?
Mhm.
That's how I'm starting to move. And it's a different way of doing it when I'm just having a full conversation with, say, the ChatGPT or a Claude or a Gemini. It's starting to be two different things on how to process one or the other.
Mm.
And then also part of that is teaching that to companies too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
I wanna comment on a couple of different changes that have happened in the way that I interact with, AI. Uh, one of them is that now that there's planning that happens by the AI
Yeah.
and creation of a multi-step process to achieve an objective that I state, I I now take advantage of plan mode. So in Claude, and others, there's a button you can click at the bottom of the dialog box that shifts it to a plan mode and or chat mode. Sometimes it's called very lovable, for example, where you're not allowing the model to then just immediately take action. You want it to present a multi-step sequence that it is devised that you then approve. And so I end up in a back and forth dialogue in the prompting process in plan mode before I ever say, okay, I approve the plan and now go ahead and execute it. That's one difference. That didn't happen in the old days, right? The other thing that's very yeah, well, I didn't do that at all. Yeah, now, the other big difference is, we spent a lot of time understanding what we needed to do to provide the full set of context to a an AI as part of the prompt. So we studied structured prompting, and you can remember back not so long ago, you have to say, okay, act as a such and such and such. There's an expert in this domain, and you're trying to steer the response that's going to happen through inference into those parts of the model with those initial phrases. And then there are other steps in there. You want to give it, context and constraints and, format and all those things. I never do that anymore.
Yeah.
I never do structured prompting anymore, and I would do so if I were building something that I wanted someone else to access, like a gem or a custom GPT. But in my actual personal responses, I've abandoned all of that because I expect that the model is going to have pretty full understanding of the context for any objective that I request.
And if it doesn't, it'll ask you. Like, that's sort of what I'm starting to see. It's like, And now I built it into the personalization. I've always built it in and be like, hey, ask one question at a time until you're ready to successfully complete the task kind of deal. So it always asks that. Sometimes I have to be like, hey, make sure to validate or verify, right? I think though it's fascinating because I'm looking some of the comments here. So like, um, is it Gene Sweetman 7311? So for Gene, I was like, yeah, it's interesting because if you don't spell out, hey, don't do the work, or hey, before you start anything, let's do the, or if you're in plan mode, it could just start executing, right?
Right.
And I think that to me, I'm not sure how many people have really understood, hey, it can do stuff now, like do stuff. So
Right.
that's the all going back to what I was talking about. It's like if you give someone who has codex access to root files and they're just in a conversation and it's like, oh, let me do that for you, or oh, I did it. And it's like, no, no, I didn't want you to do it, but they weren't in plan mode because they didn't know, or it's just it's easy to just go and start. I think like the way that most people outside the bubble still assume the tools work versus now how they work is kind of different now, right? And with all these tools, they're trying to bake it right into the hey, not only can ChatGPT do this, but it has all these toolings to do this for you, right? And unless you actually understand the nuances of that, it's starting to become very, very complicated, especially when you start adding in like playwright and then stack on those skills that either you've built or someone else built.
Mhm.
And if you say it a certain way, like Codex will pull a skill without that's the thing. It's like, I didn't want you to pull that skill, but you pulled it because I said it in a certain way. And it's like, oh, let me check that skill. It's like, no, I didn't want you to use that skill, which it's a pain in the ass in in but Claude Code has it a little bit better dialed in than Codex does in terms of understanding when to pull it, but still they pull it, and I was like, sometimes I just wanna have that it's gonna add, like, tons of, like the toggles because
Yeah.
my Claude toggle is like, okay, what did because if I have Notion and something, and then I say something, and I'm like, "Oh, going to Notion." I'm like, "No, I didn't want you to go to Notion." But I'm like, "Oh, it's my fault because I didn't put the toggle." But I have so many toggles, so every single response, I'm like, which one am I toggling? Toggle off, toggle on." Like it, yeah, that's
Yeah.
kind of ridiculous on on that end.
So I find myself doing toss away projects just to have the iterative
Yeah.
experience of okay. So one of the things that that actually I also I compound the learning from individual sessions so that it can learn how I my patterns, and I'm learning my patterns too. And one of my patterns is that I start the paragraph, it asks, "Should I go do this?" And I say, "Yes. Oh, but also blah 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 blah."
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, if I say yes and then another word, read the whole thing because maybe the end of that sentence isn't yes, and I'm using whisper flow and the CLI. So often what I see when I paste it is just like brackets and 4 lines, so I can't get in and see that the first word that I said was yes.
I
But
in that so when you're talking about that, it got me thinking too, because it's like when you're in your configuration, even on like okay, in Claude, you have your Claude MD file. In Codex, you have your agent's MD file. And then one of the best, obviously, ways to do all this is to embed in the folder you're working on, have like a consistent MD file, whatever you're working on, to give it that understanding and then an overarching part. I just like, unless you understand this deeply, if you are diving in, it's very hard to like kinda, because 'cause you're Beth, you're building on the skills you've already had. So you keep
mhm,
building and building and building, and someone who is I've noticed our prospect presentations are getting I was like, "Okay, how can I marry this to a group of people who, in some cases, I can't talk about skills, I can't talk about some of the stuff, but I have to, but then how do I do it? Because it's going in such a ridiculous pace now, and that's why I'm seeing the divergence between people who just use it, you know,
Right.
chatbot versus, hey, now we're doing stuff, and yeah, that it becomes very difficult now.
Right. Skills, plugins,
Yeah,
agents and sub-agents,
MCP,
SCP.
right? You send it, you're like, and then now I can schedule my task, but like, how do I like, right? And it's like, and then it depends on which system you're in too, right? So like in Codex, I have automations, but then I can skip, like, it's just, and I'm in it every day, so I understand, but even I'm like, okay, one or the other. You can only just imagine what people are like, what, what, what is going on? And it's like, oh, geez. And then, forget, just don't even talk about computer use. Like, it just compounds.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, I'm in, people in the, and it's not even about like programming or coding. It's more of like, this has become its own thing. And
Yes.
yeah, it's just very, very, very difficult. Although what I did notice is that like in the last presentation we did to EO, like entrepreneurs group, like a good chunk of them were actually using, and even one person put up their hand who has deployed OpenClaw, which is very unheard of. But I guess maybe that's entrepreneurs. When you get into big organizations, it's like less than. I'm not sure. Yeah.
I have this feeling. Ellie Miller posted on X 2 days ago. The tide is turning. The focus is now agent to agent communication, and I'm like, I talk about AI every day. How am I behind? Right? Like, how is this possible?
Yeah, but like
What?
who's running agent to agent communication yet? Because I was like, who? Like Cisco? Like Cisco Systems has deployed Codex to all their people. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, which major enterprises are doing this, or is it like a small sub segment in an I don't like agent to agent communication? Like, where has that deployed? Who has that deployed?
I think probably where Allie's coming from, we are not friends, though I would love to be. Um, so I am projecting what I think she might be talking about. Less about whether it's already happening, but more about how are we positioning ourselves so that
Yeah.
we have an agent that the agents can come and communicate
Call
with.
it. Well,
Right.
I guess WebMCP may be kind of like that because I would recommend to our clients build your website with WebMCP so you can determine the tooling that an agent can come in and easily do on your website without having to do a browser based, which takes forever, especially if you have a lot of logos and images and stuff like that. But
Right. And that's yes, I think that's true. That's a layer that's really, really important. And, um, Gemini, I'll tell a story tomorrow. Somebody big in Google, said, "Oh, yes, you should be thinking about, AI using your website now, an agent using your website." Have those thoughts. All right. Well, anything else? Any other wise words to leave the people with? Go forth and play with AI.
that's pretty much it.
All right. So this has completed our Thursday show. Thanks so much for joining us. Thank you to everyone in the chat. And we'll be back tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.